Once, not so very long ago, these institutions, these rooms, were filled with people who needed help and had no other place to turn. Prior to the 1960s, people who needed help with mental or emotional illnesses had only two choices for treatment: private care for the wealthy and a large state institution for everyone else. But then in the mid-60s, there was a revolution in mental health care. Community mental health centers, dedicated to providing community-based mental health services. Colonial America based its attitudes toward the mentally ill on British common law. When there was no family to take responsibility, the community reluctantly provided shelter and food, usually in the local jail or almshouse. It took a Massachusetts Sunday school teacher, Dorothea Dix, to bring the scandalous neglect of the mentally ill to public attention in the United States. After finding a large number of obviously mentally disturbed people held in the jails and poorhouses where she taught Sunday school classes, Dix began a 45-year crusade that led to the development of mental hospitals supported by state funds. Although started with the best intentions, asylums deteriorated into human warehouses, often housing as many as 15,000 inmates. Treatment was impossible under such conditions. The reality of the asylum was brought vividly to light by Clifford Beers, who recovered from severe mental illness and wrote about his hospital experiences in his 1908 autobiography, A Mind That Found Itself. Beers and the new mental hygiene movement that rallied around him advocated for care in the community, a concept that proved to be 50 years ahead of its time. The group Beers founded, however, the National Committee for Mental Hygiene, is still active today as the National Mental Health Association. As public attention turned to war, there were some significant implications for mental health. An encouraging finding was that soldiers who suffered from mental problems on the front could be helped to recover through early intervention and active treatment near the combat area. But the war also brought the discouraging news that a high proportion of young men were rejected for military service as psychiatrically unfit, indicating that mental illness was more widespread than previously believed. After World War II, Americans focused on domestic matters, mental health among them. In 1946, Congress passed the National Mental Health Act, establishing the National Institute of Mental Health and allocating some monies for states to establish small mental health clinics. An event critical to the changing mental health scene was the development in the mid-50s of major tranquilizers, making possible for the first time treatment of psychotic patients outside a hospital setting. In addition to these new drugs, innovations in psychotherapy that emphasize brief interventions set the stage for the expansion of community mental health services. State mental institutions reached their peak populations in 1955 with almost 600,000 individuals incarcerated, and President Dwight D. Eisenhower appointed a Joint Commission on Mental Health to study the problem. The Commission's report, Action for Mental Health, published in 1961, found a sympathetic ear in the next occupant of the White House. In 1963, President John F. Kennedy called for a bold new approach to mental health care, a nationwide system of community health centers, an emphasis on prevention of mental illness, and training of more professionals to provide mental health services. Congress responded with the Community Mental Health Center Construction Act, which Kennedy signed into law October 31, 1963. The Community Mental Health Center Act and its subsequent amendments authorized federal grants for the construction and staffing of centers across the nation.
The mid-60s was a turning point for the community mental health movement. Public awareness that many state institutions had become human warehouses fueled the effort, and, with the increased concern over individual civil rights, we entered a new era in mental health care.
In the 60s, we saw the development of effective tranquilizers and new approaches to psychotherapy, such as group therapy, and a variety of other intervention strategies that made community care a more feasible alternative. Government has a more active role in helping its citizens. The optimism of the era saw the development of such programs as the Peace Corps, VISTA, and the War on Poverty, as well as community mental health centers.
Legal issues addressed by legislatures and courts help foster the shift to community-based care. Issues like the methods and criteria for involuntary commitment, the right to treatment, the right to refuse treatment, and equal protection for those under psychiatric care were all areas of concern.
community mental health centers dramatically changed mental health services in America. In 1955, for example, 75% of all mental health care was provided in hospitals or other institutions. By 1975, almost 3/4 of the care was in community-based settings. Spurred by the existence of community services, effective medications, and court rulings requiring treatment in the least restrictive settings, the number of Lawrence County residents in state hospitals dropped from a high of nearly 400 in 1963 to 0 today. The chronically mentally ill, those with debilitating mental health problems of long duration, require a whole range of social services including housing, physical health care, and access to government assistance programs such as Medicaid and Social Security. Solving the problems created by deinstitutionalization is the greatest challenge facing the community mental health field today, but the effort has enormous payoffs for society. Creation of community mental health centers indeed signaled a bold new approach to mental health services. Making services available locally makes good sense. A study by the National Institute of Mental Health indicates that mental disorders affect 1 in 5 Americans. It also found that only about 1/5 of those had sought treatment, most consulting a general physician rather than a psychiatrist or other mental health specialist. In addition, it has been estimated that mental illness costs society billions of dollars each year in the U.S. in medical care, lost productivity, and social welfare programs. Community mental health centers made a variety of services available to people who have never had access to them before. These services are delivered by a team of caregivers, including psychiatrists, physicians trained in the detection, diagnosis, treatment of mental and emotional problems, and licensed to prescribe medication, clinical psychologists, specialists in the field of human behavior, also trained to assess, prevent, and treat mental and emotional problems, social workers, trained in individual and group counseling, diagnosis and program administration with a strong community orientation, psychiatric nurses with advanced training in the special needs of people with mental and emotional problems, and a host of other professionals including counselors, case managers, and vocational specialists. Prevention of mental illness has been pioneered by community mental health centers. The Human Services Center works with schools to offer consultation to guidance counselors and teachers. HSC Student Assistance Program identifies students who are having behavioral health problems. Accessibility has been the keystone of the community mental health movement. By locating services nearby, clients can continue to work and have the support of family and friends while still receiving the treatment they need.
The involvement of local citizens has made all the difference in community mental health care. The Human Services Center has an involved and active board of directors who contribute their time and talent to provide direction and support to the center.
Outpatient counseling is the most basic service, helping people understand themselves and giving them the tools they need to cope with problems. Partial hospitalization or day treatment is often an alternative for patients who need less intensive services than inpatient care, with a full range of therapeutic and rehabilitation services. The Human Services Center operates 2 school-based partial hospitalization programs for children and adolescents. For those experiencing emotional crisis, emergency mental health services are provided by Human Services Center on a 24-hour-a-day, 7-days-a-week basis through telephone crisis lines, walk-in treatment, home visits, or referrals. Human Services Center offers many types of residential programs ranging from supervised congregate care homes to private apartments that provide an opportunity for totally independent living. The center also offers a 16-unit single-room occupancy facility in Elwood City and an 11-bed short-term facility for seriously mentally ill adults. The center's broad range of services includes vocational programs that provide training and employment opportunities for clients. Clients are involved in janitorial services, dog grooming, weaving, woodworking, leaf recycling, growing and canning vegetables, and a variety of rural business ventures. What makes community mental health centers special is that they have helped to make quality mental health services accessible and affordable, whatever the need. The severity of the problems that are treated by the center varies widely from mild depression to the more serious psychological disorders. But the single greatest barrier to treatment is stigma, the embarrassment that people sometimes feel about asking for help with mental or emotional problems. Eliminating stigma is up to all of us. We must do all we can to help our neighbors feel comfortable in asking for help. The Human Services Center is proud to be part of the community mental health movement and is committed to addressing the mental health needs of Lawrence County and the residents of this region.